Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Comic Book Geezers. We got Pete here and Kirk over, wait a second, over here. There we go. Filling in for Wild Bill today. So last week, we posted a video of the three of us walking out of Zap Comics with a nice little haul, and one of our viewers took a look at that wonderful Sherlock Holmes issue that you pointed out and said, I love Sherlock Holmes. Can you guys do something on Sherlock Holmes comics? Because I know he appeared in a bunch of things. So I asked Kirk, I'm like, you got anything else you could show Sherlock Holmes? He said, I do, but you want to show off some of the Marvel preview magazines too? I said, absolutely, because I don't think we've done that before. So I'm going to turn this episode over to Kirk, and he's going to show off some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I got to say, there isn't a lot. We were talking about this earlier about Sherlock Holmes. He's such a famous character, but the comics really haven't used him a lot. And he's in actually public domain. The character fell into public domain, even though the Doyle family still owns some control on the character. The character itself is actually in public domain at this point. That means that anybody can kind of use him.
So why aren't they? That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. There's a lot of books written about him. A lot of people have, continued the stories and stuff, but Marvel, DC haven't done too much with him. Dynamite Comics did some stuff with him, and Eternity Comics did as well. I don't have any of the Dynamite or Eternity books, but I did pull out in the 70s, there was some stuff done for him from Marvel and DC, and we'll look at that. But we'll start with the Marvel preview, and then we'll work up to the Sherlock Holmes issues, because there's some stuff intermixed. I love 70s Marvel mags. I'm just a sucker, especially for the monster stuff. But it's hard to find. I go to shop after shop, and they're always kind of like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. We haven't had anything like that ever in here, or we get it in and it's gone in about 2 seconds. A lot of the books didn't survive well for whatever reason, because that's another thing. I've talked to a couple of shop owners, and they're like, yeah, when we get them, they look like they've been run over by a Mack truck, where it makes me laugh. You can see a book from the 40s that, it'll be like an 8.6, but, a magazine from the 70s looks like a 2.3. I don't know.
But do you think it's because a lot of readers treated those as magazines? I mean, we all grew up in we grew up in the 70s, so we know when you got a magazine, you read it and you threw it in a pile somewhere. So we're kind of comic collectors treating the actual full color comic books differently. They were treating the Marvel and DC black and white magazines, were they treating them differently and not kind of caring for them as much as they did for the color comics? I mean, that's kind of the impression that I get, because I agree with you. We go to lots of shows and a lot of shops, and you don't see a ton of these things around. And even when you go to the online vendors, you see, like, you'll go and one of these magazine runs has like 20 issues. You go on there and like 15 of them are not in stock because they can't get them anywhere. Yeah,
as I said, I've been piecing together sets of this, and it's hard. It's taken me years, and they did not survive well. And I've talked, as I said, most of the dealers say they can't get them. Whereas I said, yeah, you can get same 70s Hulk books, Thor, they're readily available. So yeah, I guess that must be what it was. They were just treated like regular magazines, and they're gone. It's a shame, because they're really fantastic books. And I really recommend people to look at them, because the art was fantastic. The content was a little bit more mature because it was a magazine. So Marvel released a whole bunch of them. None of them lasted long either. That's right. The sad part. The Conan magazine was about the longest lasting one, and that made it like over 100 issues.
Yeah, I think that and Deadly Hands of Kung Fu were probably the longest running ones out of all of them, right?
Yeah. Kung Fu went to like 36 or 7 or something like that. Marvel Preview was basically like their Marvel premiere. It was like they tried things out. They were constantly trying to sell different things, and most of the stuff you'll kind of recognize, but it's stuff that they gave it a shot. A lot of stuff transitioned back into comic book, the color mags, and some stuff just never kind of made it. The very first issue, which we got here, is and look, it's a Neil Adams cover. You really can't go wrong with that. It was cashing in more on the UFO craze of the 70s too, because that was really a big issue at that point. Again, just a lot of like science fiction stories, you know, and this stuff was pretty good, but nothing was consistent. Very few of these books, you know, would be like a one shot. They'd see whether it would take off or not, and then they'd go on to something else. The second issue I don't have because that one I believe is the one with Santana, and it also has the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon. My ex-wife actually has that because I did have it at one time. So what are you gonna do? You know,
There's that now.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. But anyway, but I've been piecing back. I've got this. The third one is Blade, which is really nice. And again, a lot of this stuff too. You had great talent. You had like Gene Colan working on this. So I mean, this is a really solid story. Some good art. We'll take a quick peek. But you know, again, and they could get a little bit more mature because that's the other thing. You know, you had to worry about like what were you showing in the panels? You know, could it get a comic code? You know, and the art is as I said, I think the artists had a good time working on this stuff because it was a little bit more crazy with like vampires and it's, as I said, this book though costs you a little bit more because it's Blade's like second or third appearance, its first solo story, so it's a premium book. A couple of these are pricey books, I will warn you, because as I said, I mentioned the second issue is the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon, who Guardians of the Galaxy, and that made it very hot. Book 4 is also very sought after, first appearance of Star-Lord. Again, pretty solid. Different than what you're going to experience if you're looking for like the Guardians films and stuff. This is a little bit different. This is, the early character, kind of like a Space Ranger kind of thing. Really good stuff too, though. Hard to find. Then we take a little bit of a jump because, well, we'll go to 5 because I've got it laid out over here. 5 is the book that started this whole thing for us today.
Yep.
Sherlock Holmes, which is basically an adaptation of The Hounds of Baskerville. They did like 2 of these. Again, great art.
That's a great cover. Do you know who did that cover art of that? It looks awfully familiar.
See a signature.
Might say it on the first page. The magazines are pretty good about telling who did the cover art, unlike the regular comics.
No, I'm not.
No?
No, I'm saying any. You know what that might be? That looks like Val Mayrick.
Okay.
I wonder if that's it. Because it was because he did the interior as well, if I believe. If I'm right. Read too many comic books. After a while, you're like, I used to know all this stuff, but you're like, I don't know anything. But again, really cool. I'll open up to this. You see,
oh, nice.
really, really good stuff. And this is not an expensive book. It's like $5. It's not bad. They did it like that. Now, we're going to segue into the Holmes part in a little bit, but I'm just going to jump up with a couple of the books that fell into this also. There was a Legion of Monster issue, and you'll see that.
I have that one. That one's great.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
That is. And again, this stuff is, Ken Barr did the cover. I mean, these were great books, and a buck a shot can't beat it. This is an adaptation of a book called Man God that was the next one in the series. Again, they were just kind of getting crazy with this stuff, but I love like they do the painted covers. This stuff is really, this was some really great stuff. They even do stuff that like, I don't know why they did this, but I'm happy to always see Thor.
Yeah.
Again, he was in his regular book at this point, so I don't know. Maybe they were just trying to see if they would do as well in a adult format.
Well, the Hulk was working, so they figured, why don't we see if Thor can, and that obviously didn't work. Now, wasn't, and maybe you're going to show it, but didn't the Punisher have his first solo story in one of those issues too?
That is another book I do not have. That's one of the
Gotcha.
early books.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one runs you. I've almost gotten it a couple times. I'll probably end up getting it, but yeah, that's because that tells the origin of the Punisher. So that usually retails for like, like 150 or something, a nice
Yeah.
copy of it. And again, because these magazines are hard to find in general, let alone one that's got key key book. It's a bad combo. Star-Lord kept appearing in all these books too, which was kind of nice. I've always had a soft spot for Star-Lord before he became a member of the Guardians. And then they also were, this is based on Haunts of Horror, which was another magazine that they had done 2 books as a digest and then 5 books as a regular magazine, and they died out. So, and then they tried to reboot it again with this. So I wish they'd been successful because I love this stuff, but
yeah,
didn't go.
that's a great cover, and we all love Lilith. So
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, I think a lot of this was down to Marvel trying to compete with Warren Magazine, which was doing like Vampirella, Eerie, and Creepy. And they just couldn't get where they needed to with it. They just didn't get the following that they wanted. Another Star-Lord cover. Who did this? Looks like Starlin, actually. Yeah, this is a Jim Starlin cover.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell from the woman is laying down there. It's kind of like, yep, it's a Starlin. Hold on. And we're going, okay. The next one we're going to go to, and this is where I think we're going to jump back into discussing Sherlock Holmes. Another Masters of Terror, but this is starring Huda Twist. Don't ask me. I'm probably butchering this. This is a weird book, all right? Because here we're going to talk about, as I mentioned before, like there's been different Sherlock Holmes books. There's that DC book I was talking about. And I mean, these were all based on the novels. So if you read the novels, you're kind of, these were like classic illustrated for Sherlock Holmes fans.
Gotcha.
But this is kind of weird because, again, I think Marvel was like, well, we tried the Sherlock Holmes books. That didn't work. So what we're going to do is take Sherlock Holmes, put him in 1970s, and have him fight a werewolf. But we're going to get, for some reason, they were like, we're going to change the name to Huda Twist. I don't know. And then we're going to put a Lilith backstory in it and see if that sells. It didn't. I liked it, but again...
Of course you liked it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, give me more of that. I actually remember having this book when I was a kid. Me and my brothers reading it. And as you can see, like, again, they were smart. They brought in Colin. Gene Colan does a great black and white book. I always thought he should have been. He was better off working with black and white books. But then they kept trying different stuff. A lot of sword and sorcery stuff. Here's Black Mark. Again, the great thing about these books too, they're one shots. You buy one book. If you don't get the next one, you're pretty okay. You can kind of just jump around and fill in your holes as you get them. Another Star-Lord issue. I have all of them except one of the Star-Lord issues. And then, what was it? We're on 19. One of my favorite barbarians, called the Barbarian. I'm not too sure who painted that cover, but again, really good stuff. Because again, I think the Barbarian stuff always does well with black and white.
Format. Yeah.
Then they were just like hodgepodging it, where they're putting in all sorts of different stories. There's Dominic Fortune. I don't know if you remember him. He kind of appeared in some of the Spider-Man books. He started actually as an Atlas character over in the Atlas thing, and then Howie Chaykin took him over to Marvel. They don't really kind of talk about that too much, but that's really. And then, of course, one of our favorite. I know because I hooked you up with one.
That's right? A good one. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Moon Knight again, and a Shroud story in the back. This is pretty solid. Again, great stuff. Luckily, we only have there were only 36 of these books or something like that. Then what they do is they're still going and they're doing Marvel preview. They're trying different things. Merlin. Then they switched over to. They said Marvel preview. Bizarre Adventures 2. All right. So then they do like these, and I got to say, some of these stories were good. This one's horrible. I'm going to just speak out against this one. I bought this one not that long ago. Read it, was like, man, I want my money back. So it's not a really great story. But as I said, overall, I'd say 98% of these books are really solid to read. At anything, the covers are great. This kind of reminded me a bit of Logan's Run, you know, the series.
I was just going to say that. Yep. Yep.
You know, it's that 70s feel thing. You know, you got the whole disco thing going on there. But this is a great book, and this has got some great artwork working on it, because you've got, you know, you've got Black Widow, and you've got the Daughters of the Dragon, and Lady Demon, who I never saw again. So, you know, again, but a good issue. And they got Claremont was writing the stuff. Marshall Rogers was working on it. Michael Golden. I mean, you had great people working on these books, so they're really solid.
I got to say, Natasha's looking pretty smoking on that cover.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is, you gotta love that cover. I mean, the cover alone is worth getting the book for.
It's got like this Charlie's Angels thing going on, you know?
Yeah, again, very 70s. I mean,
Yep.
I guess you grew up, so you got a soft spot for it. More Cull the Barbarian.
Oh, nice. Can't go wrong with Cull.
No, I think we're getting towards the 80s at this point. So we're up to 26. And everybody was buying the X-Men books, you know. I think they were, so of course, even the X-Men get a shot in our preview, which I don't know. So there were a bunch of solo stories. It wasn't a bad book. And then they said, well, we'll try that, and that didn't work. So then they put in, you got the Inhumans, Elektra, some guy who again looks like somebody from Logan's Run. I don't know what they're you know, again, Logan Run's not so bad. But I like these books too, because each one was so different than the next one. You know, each one's kind of unique, so it's kind of fun. Stephen King jumped in and did one, The Lawnmower Man. So it's an adaptation of his short story. Again, really solid copy, kind of twisted, but Stephen King stuff is always a little shot. Again, just because I thought Paradox wasn't a good book, I guess other people didn't agree with me. So they brought him back for a second appearance. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But, and again, this one is a great cover. You look at this, it's like, what are they trying to sell to these teenage boys? But anyway.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, but it was the 80s too, man. I got to say, Arnold Schwarzenegger looks like he should be sticking out around the corner on this one, right? You know, again, blondes and bombs and everything else. So but at that point, we're getting near the end of the run, and so again, they gave Thor another shot, which wasn't bad. Again, it's good stuff.
Great cover.
Look at the cover. Isn't that a great cover?
Cover is awesome.
I wonder if it looks like a freaking spot. But, you know, again, yeah, you got all sorts of gods of the 80s. There's some weird, like there was like a lot of weird stuff they put in these books that just did not make a lot of sense. A lot of like bizarre, I'm going to show that. That's too weird for me. But the Thor stuff is pretty good. So, but you know,
that's all that matters.
Yeah. Again, if you're a big fan of Thor, I'd advise buying those 2 issues. Those are really worth getting. Again, then they're getting ready to circle the drain. So this is the last magazine-sized copy of this, because they'd switched over from Marvel Preview to Bizarre Adventures became the name of the magazine. And they're still trying to push like the horror angle, because they got Tomb of Dracula and this Haunt of Horror, Tales of the Zombie, and Vault of Evil. But I guess I was like one of 5 people that bought this magazine. So so they were saying, well, maybe if we move it to a regular comic book size magazine. So this is actually the last issue, which is I think this is a great book. Again, and it jumped the price because what was it? It's actually more money to run it as it was $1.50 for the huge magazine before that. But now since they're doing color and all that, with like all these weird stories about, killer Santa Claus, Howard. This one's pretty damaged. Howard the Duck makes an appearance in this one.
Oh, there he is. Yep.
These are all like Christmas stories. I gotta get another copy. This is pretty bad. All right, so, but that's the whole run. And as I said, for the guy who wanted the Sherlock Holmes books, I gotta say, I'd look at the Dynamite stuff because I think that stuff probably is pretty good because everything I've read from Dynamite I like. But for whatever reason, that character doesn't get his credit a lot of times. I mean, I think he's one of the fathers of Batman, basically, when you think about it.
True. Maybe it just comes down to all-out mysteries just don't do that well in comic book format, perhaps.
I think you got to have a guy in a costume too, and again,
yeah, and is Sherlock Holmes just another like kind of shadow type of guy, right? And he's no superpowers. There's nothing really mystical and mysterious about him. He's just he's a really good detective, and Batman is that character, and he's got the cowl and the mask. So it could be. Yeah. So interesting. Well, thanks for showing off all that stuff. That's some very cool. I mean, I have a bunch of them too, but you got some cool ones. So, and I've been eyeing that Punisher one for a while, but yeah, that's a little pricey.
I know. I got to get it because I want to finish off this set, and I'm gonna have to replace that one that I lost with Rocket Raccoon, and I'm dreading that. I keep looking around. I talked to one shop owner. He had it up on the wall. I'm like, how much you want for that? And he was like, $350. I'm like, that looks great where it is. I'm like, you can just leave it up there. $350. I'm dropping $350 on a book.
Yeah, we love Rocket, but not that much, right?
No. It kills me. As I said, I lost that book years ago. So
yeah, you always got to hate the ones that got away. It's like every time Bill shows off his Spider-Man 129, I'm like, that used to be mine. Damn.
I think every collector who's been doing this a long time has those ones that got away. That's
the worst one for me.
Yeah. So you're kind of like, ugh. And as we said, we both sold a bunch of books when we were in college. It was kind of like, oh yeah, what are you doing? You sell them to the guy in Newport's, and he took us to the cleaners. Right?
Oh, big time. It's like, here's your $50. Or yeah, you can buy beer for the next 2 weeks, right? And then 30 years later, you're like, oh, those books are worth thousands. Like, oh my God, what was I doing? So yeah, well, to be young and stupid, right? Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us here on this special look at some of Marvel's Marvel Preview Black and White magazine. Some cool stuff. Thanks to Kirk for showing off those. And thanks for everybody for watching. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Come back often. We'll have more content for you next week. And while, Bill, if you're watching, Kirk corrected his little internet follies early on. We almost had a Max Headroom Part 2. So you're not the only one, man.
No. We gotta have Bill here in spirit at least, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Take care, everybody. For Kirk, I am Pete. We'll see you guys in a couple days. Bye-bye.